I never expected my morning to begin with the sound of a grown man forgetting how to breathe, but that is exactly what happened when Martin Halden, the chief executive officer of Halden Global, opened the email I had sent him less than 3 minutes earlier. His voice cracked. "Grace, what is this?" He stared at the screen as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less dangerous. His hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly, and for the first time in 3 years of working under him, I saw genuine fear flicker across his face. Not irritation, not corporate annoyance. Fear. I stood across from him, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I understand, sir," I said. "But before you continue, open that email." He already had, but I let the sentence hang between us anyway. It gave me something to hold on to. My palms were cold, and my heartbeat felt heavier than it should have. But I refused to show it. I had spent too long letting other people's whims decide my future. Not today. Martin swallowed hard, eyes scanning the first page. He whispered something under his breath. My name. I think then slumped back in his chair as if the weight of what he was reading pulled him down. That was when I realized I needed to leave the room. Not because I was scared. Because he was. I reached for my bag, slid the strap over my shoulder, and stepped back from the desk. The door behind me was only a few feet away, but crossing that distance felt like walking out of an old life and into something still forming in the dark. I turned the handle slowly. "Grace, wait," Martin said. But the words came out thin, barely there. I didn't wait. I walked out of his office and let the door fall shut behind me, muffling whatever came next. The air in the hallway felt sharper against my skin, almost electric. I kept walking, letting the silence wrap around me as the adrenaline settled. Only when I reached the elevator did my composure slip. My throat tightened, and the memory hit me how everything had started the night before. And just like that, the story began to rewind. The morning started with a message from Martin's assistant. "He needs to see you immediately. No explanation. No tone I could decode. Just urgency." When I walked into his office, he wouldn't even meet my eyes. "Grace," he said, and his voice was already breaking. I am sorry, but my wife." He stopped, swallowed, tried again, and failed. I stepped closer. "Your wife. What, exactly?" He rubbed his forehead. "She believes there was an incident last night. A misunderstanding. I have to take her concerns seriously. That is not an explanation." I said. "That is a sentence that avoids an explanation." He flinched. "It is complicated." "It really is not," I said quietly. "Just tell me the truth." He didn't. He couldn't. He just shook his head like the words were too shameful to say out loud. Before I could push further, someone else entered Dana from HR, stiff as a mannequin, carrying a printed packet. "Grace," she said, "today we're conducting a transition meeting. The decision has been made based on performance alignment and departmental restructuring." Martin winced at her lie. I watched him sink into his chair. I looked at Dana. "My performance has been rated exceptional for 3 years. There is no restructuring. You know that." Dana cleared her throat. "This is what I am authorized to communicate." "So no one can say it?" I asked her. "No one can say why this is really happening?" She lowered her gaze. Martin squeezed his temples like the silence was crushing him. I stepped back from both of them. "All right," I said. "If no one here can speak the truth, I will find my own way to hear it." Martin tried again, voice barely audible. "Grace, please. My wife." She felt she believes he still could not finish the sentence. I walked out of his office that morning, knowing the reason had nothing to do with my work. It came from somewhere irrational, petty, and deeply personal, something he was terrified to repeat. The night before, everything fell apart. I had been doing exactly what the company paid me to do, represent us with competence and courtesy. The charity gala at the Seattle Art Museum was loud, crowded, and full of people pretending their wine glasses were shields against awkward small talk. I was speaking with 2 visiting partners when I felt someone step into our circle. I turned, saw a familiar face, and offered the habit I had carried for years, a small, respectful bow of my head, the kind I used with East Asian clients who valued quiet acknowledgement. It was natural to me, almost automatic. A woman's voice sliced in before I could speak. "Is that supposed to mean something?" I lifted my head. Leona Halden stood inches from me, a practiced smile stretching across her face. "Good evening, Mrs. Halden," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I did not see you approach." "You did," she replied, her smile tightening, "and you chose not to stand." One of the partners glanced between us. I shifted slightly. I was finishing a point in our conversation. I meant no disrespect. Leona's eyes narrowed. "You bowed. At me." "It was a greeting," I said, "a respectful one." She let out a soft laugh. "You think I do not know sarcasm when I hear it, or see it." There was no sarcasm. I answered, steady but confused. "I greet many of our partners the same way." Her gaze flickered, something sharp passing through it. "You must think you are very clever." "Grace, I think I am being polite." She stepped closer. Polite would have been standing. Polite would have been acknowledging my position. "You chose not to." "That was not my intention." "Intentions rarely matter," she said. "Perception does." I opened my mouth to respond, but she turned and walked away, leaving the air around me colder than it had been moments before. I did not know it then, but that single second my harmless bow had already begun rewriting the fate of my career. The morning after the gala, whispers moved through the office faster than the elevators did. I heard my name twice before I even reached my desk. By the time I sat down, Jenna from compliance slid into the chair across from me, lowering her voice. "Grace, did something happen last night?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Leona was in here early. She asked for a list of everyone who attended the event, specifically women in leadership roles." I stared at her. "Why would she need that?" Jenna exhaled. "You know her reputation. She did the same thing to Harper 2 years ago, and Melissa before that." I leaned forward. What happened to them? "They got opportunities elsewhere within a month," she said. "Officially, nothing was wrong. Unofficially, they offended Leona somehow, and Martin decided he valued domestic harmony more than corporate fairness." I pressed my palms together. "Are you telling me she can decide who stays or leaves?" "She cannot," Jenna said. "But she does." Before I could process that, the glass doors to the corridor swung open. Leona walked in as if she owned the entire 20th floor. She stopped when she saw me, lips curving into a smile that felt too polished. "Grace," she said sweetly, "I hope you enjoyed last night." I kept my voice steady. "I did. I hope you did as well." "Oh, I had a memorable time," she replied. "Especially the greeting you offered me." My jaw tightened. It was a greeting of respect. She leaned in slightly. Respect is not what I felt. It was not meant as disrespect. "Intentions rarely matter," she said again, echoing her line from the night before. "Perception does, and my perception is what Martin listens to." I felt something inside me go still. "Are you telling me I am in trouble because of a greeting?" She gave a soft, triumphant smile. "Oh, Grace, I am not telling you anything. I never do." She walked away, leaving Jenna wide-eyed beside me. In that moment, I understood that I was not dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with someone who wanted me gone. When I stepped out of Martin's office, the hallway felt too narrow. My breath came uneven, and I pushed through the stairwell door before anyone could see my face. The moment it closed behind me, everything I had been holding in cracked. I gripped the railing. "I cannot lose this job," I whispered. "Not now." Images hit me like blows. My rent due in 2 weeks, the medical bills from my father's physical therapy, the promise I made him that I would handle everything. My vision blurred. I let out one shaky breath, then another, trying to steady myself. Footsteps echoed from a higher floor, and I forced myself upright. No one could see me like this. I wiped my face and whispered, "Enough." The word felt thin, but it held. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, scrolling through the folder I had forgotten about for months. Document after document. Notes I had made. Emails I had forwarded to myself. Records of every time Leona had inserted herself into internal decisions. Her complaints, her requests, her instructions filtered through Martin. "All the things no one dared speak of," I whispered. "You did not erase those. Leona, you left a trail." A memory surfaced last winter's town hall meeting, when Halden Global bragged about its new anti-nepotism governance standards. Pure transparency, they called it. No interference from family members of executives. I laughed once, a soft, humorless sound. They had practically written the rule book for their own downfall. My fear did not disappear, but it shifted, sharpening into something steadier. I could not outpower Leona, but I could out-document her. I could use the very standards the company displayed like trophies. I slipped my phone back into my bag. The stairwell suddenly felt different, less like a cage, more like a starting point. I pushed open the door and walked back into the hallway, no longer running from anything. I closed my office door and locked it, something I never did. My hands were still unsteady, but my mind felt sharper than it had all morning. If they wanted to pretend this was a performance issue, then I would show them exactly what performance looked like. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had built without even realizing it. Each file carried a memory. The first was an internal memo from 6 months earlier. I clicked it open. "Please reroute all international approvals through me." Martin had written, "At the time, I had been confused. International approvals had always been my responsibility." Then I remembered the line he told me afterward. "Leona prefers to preview anything that might be discussed at social events." I dragged the memo into the email draft. Next came the policy documents, the ones Halden Global loved to print on glossy brochures. I highlighted the section on anti-nepotism and governance. No family member of an executive may influence staffing decisions, client negotiations, or operational processes. I attached the full document. Then I opened my own notes, a series of written warnings I had sent to HR. There has been increased external interference in workflow, concerns regarding spousal influence on approvals, requesting clarification on compliance. Each message had been acknowledged, then quietly buried. All of them went into the email. Finally, I hesitated before opening the last file, the recording. It was from 2 months ago, captured automatically during a meeting with HR where one of the managers slipped. "Look, Grace, when Leona has feelings about something, we all just try to adapt. It is easier this way. Under Washington's one-party consent law, the recording was legal. I placed it in the email without labeling it. When I looked at the draft, it felt like staring at the underside of the company, every hidden thread pulled into the open. Not a threat, not a plea. A governance alert, clean and precise. I typed Martin's name into the recipient line. Then I hit send and sat still, listening to the quiet hum of my computer, knowing the real fallout had finally begun. When I stepped back into Martin's office, the air felt heavy enough to push against my ribs. Dana from HR stood beside him, holding a file she clearly wished someone else would carry. Martin cleared his throat. "Grace, as we discussed earlier, this decision is final." "My wife." I lifted a hand. "I understand." "Sir." His relief flickered too soon. "But before you continue, open that email." Dana's eyes shot toward me. Martin frowned. What email, the one I sent less than 5 minutes ago? He glanced at his screen, clicked once, and the room changed. What is this? He whispered. Grace! What is this? I did not speak. It would have softened the blow, and he did not deserve soft. He scrolled, jaw tightening, breath thinning. When he reached the attached recording file, his hand froze over the mouse. Dana leaned closer. Martin, is this accurate? He shut his eyes, shoulders sagging. This cannot leave this room. It already left the room the moment you fired me for someone else's feelings, I said quietly. He looked at me then, really looked, and panic cracked through his composure. Grace, the board cannot see this. They will think I have not sent it to the board, I said, but HR has now seen it, and HR cannot pretend it does not exist. Dana stepped back, her voice small but firm. We cannot terminate her. Martin, not with this. It would violate every governance rule we have. Martin's voice dropped to a rasp. Grace, please. You do not understand what this means for my leadership. I understand perfectly, I said, and I also understand what your silence has meant for mine. No one spoke for several seconds. The quiet felt deeper than any argument could. I picked up my bag. I will let you decide what happens next. Then I walked out, steady and silent, leaving Martin trapped in the consequences he had tried so hard to hide. I was packing the last of my things when Jenna from compliance slipped into my office and shut the door behind her. Grace, she whispered, do not leave the building yet. I turned. Why not? Her expression tightened. Someone sent your evidence packet to the board of directors. Anonymous sender. It was not you. Right, no, I said. I never sent anything beyond that email to Martin. Well, she continued, the board has it. All of it. They called an emergency review 30 minutes ago. My heart thudded. Martin is already in there. Dragged in, she said, and Leona showed up uninvited. I followed her to the end of the hallway where the conference room blinds were half drawn. Muffled voices spilled through the crack under the door. A board member's voice rose first. Mr. Halden, explain why a senior employee was terminated for what appears to be a personal dispute initiated by your spouse. Martin's answer was low, desperate. There was miscommunication. My wife believed Leona cut in sharply. I believed nothing. I knew that woman mocked me. Another board member spoke. Mrs. Halden, your name appears multiple times in internal memos and correspondence influencing staffing decisions. She stepped forward. I was only protecting my husband's reputation. That is not your role, another voice replied. And Mr. Halden allowed it. Silence followed, long, tight, suffocating. Then the chair of the board spoke, each word measured. Until this matter is fully investigated, Mr. Halden is placed on temporary suspension effective immediately. I heard Leona gasp, then hiss something I could not make out. Jenna exhaled beside me. This is going to shake the entire company. I nodded slowly, absorbing the shock. And somewhere behind the fear, a new question surfaced, not about power, but loyalty. Someone inside this building had decided to stand with me. I had barely stepped out of the elevator lobby when my phone rang. The number was familiar in a distant way, one of our longtime partners, a major logistics firm based near the Seattle waterfront. I answered cautiously. This is Grace Calloway, a warm voice replied. This is Daniel Rivers from Cascadia Pacific Logistics. Do you have a moment? I stopped walking. Of course. I imagine things at Halden Global are turbulent today, he said. We have been following the governance situation. Word travels quickly in international circles. I exhaled slowly. It has been an unusual day. That is one word for it, he said. Another would be revealing. You handled yourself with integrity. That matters to us. I leaned against a column. Thank you. I appreciate that. "We have admired your work for years," Daniel continued. "Your negotiation style, your cultural fluency. The way you stabilized that Pacific shipment dispute last spring, I remember every detail. And frankly, we think Halden Global has made a mistake. I cannot argue with that." He laughed. Then his tone softened. "Grace, we would like to speak to you about a position with us." I blinked. A senior role," he clarified. "Director of Pacific Trade Operations. Full authority over cross-regional coordination. We can discuss compensation and structure. But the role is yours if you want it." My breath caught for the first time that day, but not from fear. "Why now?" "Because anyone who stands their ground the way you did," he said, "should not be left standing alone." My throat tightened. "Daniel, I would like to hear more." "Good," he replied. "Our board meets tomorrow. Join us. No pressure, just a conversation." I nodded, even though he could not see it. "I will be there." When the call ended, I stood still for a moment, letting the choice settle. For the first time since the previous night, the future did not feel like something collapsing. It felt like something opening. 1 year later, I walked into the atrium of Cascadia Pacific Logistics, now my second home. The space was overflowing with reporters, industry partners, and board members from both companies. Today marked the signing of a joint Pacific partnership, a collaboration large enough to reshape trade routes from Seattle to Singapore. Daniel stepped beside me. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I ever am." Across the room, Martin Halden stood stiffly near the podium. He looked older, quieter, stripped of the unearned confidence he once wore like armor. His reinstatement at Halden Global came with conditions, and none of them restored the power he once wielded casually. When he saw me approaching, his posture faltered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he did something I never expected. He bowed, a small incline of his head. Simple, unembellished, honest. Not the dramatic gesture Leona once demanded from the women around her, not the brittle acknowledgement he had given me years ago. This was something else entirely, a man recognizing the damage he allowed, and the role I played in bringing it to light. "Director Calloway," he said softly, "thank you for being here." "Chief Executive Officer Halden," I replied, steady and calm. He extended his hand. I took it without hesitation. There were no apologies, no explanations, no revisiting the past, because the past no longer held any leverage. I had already stepped beyond it. "Leona will not be attending," I asked. Martin shook his head. "She is not permitted at internal functions anymore. Board directive." "I see." Daniel called my name, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. I released Martin's hand and walked toward the stage, my steps light. As the cameras flashed and the agreement was signed, I felt something settle inside me, an ease I had not known during all my years at Halden Global. When the event concluded, I stepped out into the cool Seattle air, and for the first time, I realized I was walking away from that building with nothing left to carry.